The sea was restless that night. Waves crashed against the cliffs with a sound like heavy breathing, each one collapsing against the rocks before retreating into the black. The air was sharp with salt, the mist thick enough to taste. The world had no edges here, no sky, no sea, only the endless gray. Mara walked the narrow path leading up to the lighthouse, her boots slipping on wet stones. Every step echoed against the cliffside, lost instantly in the roar of the waves. The tower rose before her like a monument of iron and loneliness. Its single beam swept across the night, slow, deliberate, alive. It cut through the fog, catching the faint shimmer of rain. For a moment, as the light passed over her, she thought she saw something move in the mist beside her path. But when she turned, there was nothing there, only the sea breathing below. When she reached the gate, the air smelled of rust and cold metal. The key in her pocket felt impossibly heavy, its weight pulling her hand downward as if resisting her touch. She hesitated, not from fear, but from a strange sense of familiarity. The lighthouse loomed above her like a place from a half-remembered dream. The villagers had warned her not to stay overnight. The old ferryman refused to look her in the eye when she mentioned the keeper's quarters. "Just light the beacon and leave before dawn," he said. "And if the light still burns, don't let it go out." She had smiled politely then, pretending not to notice his trembling hands. But now, standing before the gate, the warning returned like a whisper inside her skull. The storm rolled across the sea behind her. Lightning traced the horizon. Mara lifted the key and turned it in the lock. The sound was deafening, the sound of something ancient waking up. The door swung open, and darkness spilled out like smoke. She lifted her lantern, the flames shivering against the damp air. The inside of the lighthouse smelled of oil, salt, and time. Every surface was coated in dust, and every object looked abandoned in mid-motion, as if someone had simply vanished while reaching for something. The beam from her lantern revealed a spiral staircase rising into the dark. The iron railing was cold and slick. Photographs hung on the wall, their edges curling from moisture. Men and women in heavy coats, some smiling faintly, others staring with hollow eyes. One photo had a black X drawn through it. Another had its face scratched out entirely. Mara stared at them for a moment too long. The silence seemed to stretch until the walls began to creak. When she turned her light away, she could still feel the weight of their gaze. She took one of the photos down and flipped it over. On the back, written in faded ink, were the words, "He kept the light, even when the sea called him home." Her breath fogged against the glass. She tried to imagine the man, alone in this place, surrounded by wind and water. A sudden gust slammed the door shut, the sound echoing through the hollow tower like a gunshot. She jumped, dropping the photo. The frame cracked. The lantern flickered. Somewhere above, she heard movement, slow, deliberate, like footsteps circling the upper level. She whispered to herself that it was only the storm, only the wind moving through the vents. But she knew the pattern of sound too well. That wasn't wind. That was someone walking. The stairs groaned under her boots as she climbed. With each step, the air grew colder. Her lantern cast long shadows up the walls, each one moving slightly behind her out of rhythm. Halfway up, she paused. The sound came again, 3 knocks, evenly spaced, human. Her pulse quickened, but she kept climbing until she reached the trapdoor leading to the lantern room. It was slightly open, swaying on its hinges, breathing in time with the storm. Mara pushed it wider, the hinges screaming. Cold air rushed in. The entire room smelled of burnt oil and lightning. And yet, the great lens of a lighthouse still turned. Its machinery was silent. The switch rested firmly in the off position, but the light, the impossible light, pulsed steadily, cutting through fog that didn't seem to move. She stepped closer to the massive lens, the glow reflecting in her eyes. It wasn't pure white, as she expected, but gold, almost alive, like sunlight trapped inside glass. Each rotation lit her face, her hands, and then the sea outside. She leaned close to the control panel, running her fingers along the old brass dials. Every lever was frozen in place. When lightning flashed, the reflection on the glass changed. For an instant, she saw a figure standing on the rocks below, still, tall, unmoving. And in the next blink, it was gone. Her breath caught in her throat. The light passed over her again, and this time she thought she saw a shadow move behind her reflection. She turned and stumbled down the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the hollow tower. In the kitchen below, everything looked untouched, as if someone had only just left. A cup half filled with blackened coffee sat beside a logbook. She opened it carefully. The paper was warped and stained with salt. The handwriting inside was rushed, panicked, and uneven. If you're reading this, you've heard it too. There were more notes, half erased by water damage. The light is not what it seems. It watches when you sleep. Her hand trembled as she turned the last page, the ink smeared as though by tears. Don't answer the knocking. Thunder rolled outside, shaking the tower. Mara looked toward the window. The glass had fogged, but through the condensation she could see something pale move past. Not a reflection, not a trick of the storm. Something outside the window. She stepped closer, wiping the glass with her sleeve. The outline vanished instantly. Only her own reflection remained, pale, wide-eyed, trembling. She drew the curtain shut and sat beside the old stove, clutching her blanket. The wind moaned through the cracks in the wall like a voice trying to speak. And then, faintly, from somewhere deep below, she heard it. Tap, tap, tap. She held her breath. The knocks came again, softer this time, almost gentle but deliberate. She rose slowly, holding her lantern near the floorboards. The flame trembled. The sound came from beneath her feet. When she leaned closer, the knock stopped. And then, through the wood, a voice whispered, hoarse, distant, impossibly clear. Don't let it go out. She stumbled back, knocking over the lantern. The flame went out instantly, swallowing the room in darkness. The tower creaked. The light above flickered twice, then steadied again, bright as ever. Her heart pounded in her throat. She stayed frozen there for a long time, waiting for the voice to return. It never did. When dawn finally came, the storm had passed. The world outside was quiet, wrapped in mist. The sea looked almost gentle now, waves brushing the rocks with slow, tired sighs. Mara climbed the stairs once more, every step echoing like a memory. When she reached the lantern room, the light still turned. The same pulse, the same golden hue. She knelt beside the base to inspect the mechanism and saw something carved into the metal, hidden beneath years of grime and dust. A single word, stay. The letters were deep, carved with force. Mara traced them with her fingertips. Her voice trembled when she whispered, I'm not going anywhere. The light turned once more, washing her in its glow. Soft, cold, infinite. And for a heartbeat, it felt like something inside the beam was whispering back. The storm had finally passed, leaving the lighthouse in a suffocating, almost tangible stillness. Mara woke to the faint groan of timber beneath the weight of a wind that had subsided. The room was heavy with moisture, the metallic tang of salt lingering in the air, mixing with the faint, elusive scent of something older, something hidden in the stones themselves. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders and sat on the edge of the bed listening. The walls seemed to lean closer, their very fibers shivering with anticipation. Outside, the horizon was a blurred line of gray, the boundary between sky and sea swallowed in fog. Each creak of the structure beneath her was amplified, echoing in the empty spaces like whispers she almost recognized. Her breath drew shallow, matching the rhythm of a heartbeat she was certain wasn't entirely her own. She rose slowly, every motion deliberate, letting her fingers trace the grooves carved into the desk by previous keepers, initials, dates, tiny sigils she could not decipher. The fog rolled lazily across the cliffs outside, curling in ghostly ribbons as if the world itself were breathing in tandem with the lighthouse. Light from the lantern above flickered faintly, casting shadows that danced across the walls, moving as if alive, elongating and shrinking, stretching toward corners Mara could not see. Somewhere far below, the tide whispered against jagged rocks, irregular, insistent, pressing into the foundation as though it sought passage into the tower itself. She felt the pressure on her chest, a gentle insistence, almost a heartbeat aligning with her own, guiding her gaze toward the horizon. She blinked. A fleeting pulse of movement vanished into the fog, leaving her eyes questioning the world itself. By mid-morning, she forced herself to focus on the logbook left by the previous keeper. Its pages were warped and slick with humidity. Ink had run in places, letters bleeding softly into one another. Each entry ended with the same ominous phrase, repeated in different handwritings over decades. "Keep it alive!" Mara's fingers traced the indentations, feeling a faint warmth, a subtle vibration that seemed to move under her skin. She looked to the window and watched as a drop of condensation slid down, landing precisely on the word alive. Her heartbeat faltered and then settled, as if in harmony with some hidden pulse beneath the stones, beneath the floorboards, beneath the lighthouse itself. She shivered, sensing that the tower, though empty, was not silent, not inactive, it was alive. The lantern flickered violently, casting long, restless shadows. Mara's gaze darted around the room, searching for the source of the faint hum that had begun beneath her feet. The air felt heavier now, weighted with an unseen presence, brushing lightly against her arms and neck without any physical form. She exhaled slowly, feeling the rhythm of her own breath intertwine with the soft, irregular tapping echoing through the walls. Every step she took was measured, deliberate. Every sound, her heartbeat, the creak of wood, the flutter of the lantern flame, seemed amplified, responded to, observed. For the first time, she realized she was not alone. She climbed the spiral staircase toward the lantern room, careful where she placed each foot. The machinery, older than she imagined, hummed faintly, a vibration almost alive under her palm as she rested her hand on the metal casing of the rotating lens. The tower itself seemed to inhale, exhale, pulse beneath her touch. Outside, gulls circled in slow arcs, one dipping too close to the light before vanishing into the fog. Its cry abruptly cut short. Mara leaned closer to the window, fog curling inward as if drawn to the tower, smoke-like and deliberate. Her reflection shimmered. She swore it tilted its head independently, examining her, testing her, just for a heartbeat before returning to stillness. Back on the ground floor, a new puddle had formed at the base of the stairs. She had closed all windows and doors the night before, yet here it was, glimmering faintly in the lantern light. In the center floated a dark gray feather, spinning lazily. Beneath it, faint chalk lines etched themselves across the stone floor. Spirals, circles, arrows pointing inward, intricate as a labyrinth. She crouched, following the lines with a trembling fingertip. The stone beneath her skin pulsed, warm and alive. The lanterns flickered in perfect unison, responding to her subtle movements. Shadows stretched and breathed along the walls, dancing like living things, weaving around her limbs and reflections. Later, she settled at the kitchen table, tea long gone cold, the cup abandoned. From the walls came scratching sounds, slow, deliberate, almost musical. She pressed an ear to the wood. Whispered words formed in a tongue she did not understand, flowing like water, melodic yet alien. Stepping back, the sound ceased. Her reflection in the window shimmered. Her mouth moved without her, forming a soft, ghostly smile. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing into her shoulders, a living weight of presence she could not see but undeniably felt. The trapdoor beneath the rug beckoned, inevitable. Lifting it, she revealed a spiral staircase leading down into darkness. Cold air, tinged with salt and rust, escaped. The lantern cast its glow downward, illuminating chalk spirals identical to those above. Each step downward brought warmer, heavier air, pulsing as though the chamber itself breathed in time with her own heartbeat. Silence here was not absence. It was a presence with teeth, pressing into her chest, whispering understanding, not threat. At the bottom, Mara entered the circular chamber. Its walls were etched with spirals of text, curling endlessly inward, a language she could not read. Amid the script, one phrase emerged, repeated. "The silence watches you." The letters glimmered, pulsing faintly with life in the lantern glow. A whisper brushed her ear. "Keep it alive." The lantern flickered, then went out. Darkness pressed thick against her eyes. Slowly, it reignited, brighter than before. The spirals glowed. The floor beneath her pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. The silence was awake, alive, and Mara could feel it moving through her veins, tethering her pulse to its own. The whisper came again, clearer, emanating not from the walls, but from deep within her chest. "The silence lives through you." Her hands trembled as she steadied the lantern. Its flame burned steady, golden, unwavering, casting long, fluid shadows across the walls, pulsating like her heartbeat. The feather hovered above the puddle, spinning as if drawn by an invisible current. The spirals etched into the stone shimmered faintly, alive, responding to her breath and movements. The tower, the silence, the feather, the spirals, all had been waiting, guiding her, teaching her. She realized the silence was not empty, but alive, breathing through her, flowing with her pulse. Her heartbeat synchronized with the stone beneath her feet, the lantern's rotation, and the spiral's rhythm, bringing understanding to her chest. Mara smiled softly, tears pricking her eyes, not of sorrow but recognition. She was not just an observer. She was a participant, a vessel for the tower, the light, and the silence itself. The whispers were gone, but their rhythm remained, a certainty she would carry forward. The silence had never been empty. It had been waiting for her to awaken within it, to keep the light alive, and now she understood. A new silence had settled over the lighthouse, different from the one Mara had felt before, heavier, pregnant with anticipation. The air smelled faintly of damp stone and old wood, but beneath that lay a metallic tang, sharper this time, like the memory of something recently disturbed. Mara's footsteps echoed softly as she moved toward the far wall, where yesterday's observations had hinted at irregularities in the stone. Her hands traced the surface, fingertips catching tiny indentations, subtle grooves invisible to anyone unobservant. She felt the walls pulse under her touch, a rhythm that seemed to hum in tandem with her heartbeat, coaxing her closer to discovery. Behind a loose panel, she found a faint outline of a door hidden in plain sight. Her breath quickened, fingers brushing over the cold metal handle. It was heavier than expected, but it moved smoothly, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into shadow. The lantern cast its golden light down the steps, illuminating faint chalk symbols along the edges, spirals, circles, arrows pointing inward as if guiding her. Every step down reverberated through the stone, vibrating under her feet, almost like a heartbeat that wasn't her own. The air grew warmer, thicker, carrying the scent of salt and dust, tinged with the faintest aroma of old parchment. At the bottom, a low chamber spread out, circular and intimate, yet filled with the weight of history. The walls were lined with shells of artifacts, rusted keys, fragments of journals, jars filled with substances Mara could not identify, each humming faintly with some hidden energy. Shadows stretched and danced with the lantern's flame, flickering across inscriptions on the walls. They seemed alive, reacting to her presence, bending subtly toward her, waiting for recognition. Mara ran her fingers along the spines of books and the edges of objects, each touch sending a shiver up her arms, a whispering hum threading through the room. The centerpiece of the chamber was a pedestal holding a delicate, intricately carved model of the lighthouse. Its small lantern rotated slowly, casting perfect shadows across the walls, mirroring the real lighthouse above. She leaned closer, observing tiny spirals etched along the base, identical to the chalk patterns she had seen earlier. A soft warmth pulsed beneath her palm as she brushed over it. It was alive, not mechanically, but as if imbued with memory, with intention. The room seemed to inhale with her movements, the walls expanding subtly, breathing in the rhythm of her curiosity and fear. A sound emerged from the back of the chamber, subtle at first, like a whisper across stone, but growing in presence. Mara's head tilted, listening. The walls themselves seemed to pulse in response, echoes of past keepers, past discoveries, past silences vibrating through the air. Her hand grazed a journal, pages brittle, edges curling from moisture. As she opened it, faint sketches danced across the paper. Spirals, symbols, diagrams of the lighthouse, and notes written in languages she could not identify. Each sketch pulsed faintly in the lantern light, a rhythm she could almost feel in her chest, aligning with her heartbeat. The air in the chamber thickened, scented with salt, rust, and something floral, faint but unmistakable. Mara noticed a shadow shift independently of her movements, not a figure, but a presence, a subtle ripple across the walls and floor. She breathed carefully, tracing the symbols with her eyes, feeling the pulse of a chamber beneath her hands. Each object she touched, each spiral she followed, seemed to vibrate with hidden knowledge, resonating with her energy, acknowledging her understanding, beckoning her to deeper discovery. She realized the chamber itself was alive, a guardian of secrets, an archive of memories preserved in stone, wood, and ink. At the far end, she discovered a smaller alcove, its entrance almost invisible. Pushing aside a hanging curtain of cobwebs, she revealed a niche filled with artifacts unlike any she had seen before. An ancient compass, crystal vials filled with swirling dust, and a mirror with faint etchings along its edge. She reached for the mirror, fingertips brushing against its surface. The reflection shimmered, showing the room behind her, but also subtle movements she had not seen, objects vibrating softly, shadows pulsing, spirals faintly glowing. Mara's breath caught. She realized that each artifact was not simply stored here. They were active participants in the chamber's memory, recording, observing, and responding. A sudden draft brushed her face, carrying the scent of rain and distant lightning. The lantern flame flickered violently, throwing elongated shadows along the walls. Mara's hand hovered over a cluster of journals, feeling the energy thrumming beneath the covers. A faint whisper rose from the stones themselves, unintelligible but melodic, curling around her like a tangible presence. Each step, each gesture, each inhalation she took was mirrored by the chamber, the walls bending subtly toward her, the artifacts resonating softly with a quiet, insistent rhythm. The hidden room was not silent, it was alive, and it had been waiting. Mara turned toward the pedestal again, studying the lighthouse model. The spirals etched into the base pulsed faintly, aligning with the faint whispers that swirled through the chamber. The walls hummed beneath her fingers, and a warmth spread from the center of the room outward, a subtle pressure that pressed lightly against her chest. She felt the history of keepers, of storms weathered, of lights maintained, all threading through her consciousness. She understood, in a quiet, profound way, that this chamber was a living memory, not just of objects, but of intention, purpose, and vigilance. Hands trembling, she traced a final spiral along the pedestal, and a subtle glow expanded from it, illuminating the walls, the shelves, the artifacts, each in perfect detail. The chamber pulsed softly, rhythmically, as if exhaling, welcoming her comprehension. Mara's heartbeat aligned with the pulse of the hidden room. She realized that the chamber had chosen her not merely as a visitor, but as a participant, a keeper of knowledge, a witness to history, a guardian of light. The whisper was gone, replaced by a profound stillness, alive with expectation, as if the room itself waited for her next move, her next understanding. Finally, she exhaled slowly, the lantern steady in her hands. The glow reflected across the shelves, illuminating artifacts, symbols, and spirals, revealing their delicate patterns in full. She felt a sense of completeness, yet also of anticipation. The hidden room had shown her only part of its secrets, enough to teach, guide, and prepare her for what lay beyond the lighthouse walls. Mara understood now. The room, the tower, the light, and the silence were intertwined, alive, and she had become an integral thread in that living memory, tasked with keeping its light, knowledge, and mysteries alive. Her fingers lingered on the pedestal, tracing the spirals once more, feeling a subtle pulse beneath her touch. The feather drifted above a puddle, journals hummed faintly, and the spirals glowed softly, responsive to her presence. She realized the room was a living companion, patient and sentient, waiting for her awareness to awaken fully. Mara knew her purpose was not merely to observe, but to continue the legacy, to safeguard the light, the silence, and the secrets for generations to come. The first rays of dawn crept through the lighthouse windows, brushing the stone walls with a soft, golden light. Mara's lantern rested at her side, its flame diminished but still warm, casting long shadows across the chamber. The spirals on the walls glowed faintly, pulsing with a rhythm she had come to recognize. Each breath she took seemed to synchronize with the room, the chamber itself exhaling and inhaling in harmony with her heartbeat. A low hum vibrated through the floor, subtle yet insistent, and she realized the hidden room was no longer simply a place of memory. It was alive, aware, and waiting for her full understanding. Her hands moved over the artifacts once again, tracing the edges of journals, brushes, and glass vials. The glow of the lantern caught on etched symbols, revealing patterns she had not noticed before. Spirals within spirals, fractals of memory and intention. The feather hovered, suspended as if by its own will, drifting lazily above a shallow puddle. Mara's fingertips tingled where they hovered near the intricate carvings. She could feel the energy pulsing, subtle yet unmistakable, as though the room was teaching her not with words, but through touch, through sensation, through the unspoken rhythm of the stones and air. A breeze swept through the chamber, carrying the scent of rain and distant lightning, mingled with the salt of the sea. Mara shivered but did not retreat. The whisper she had heard before returned, soft and melodic, threading through the air around her. "You are the light, you are the keeper." The words were not loud, yet they resonated in every corner of her mind, aligning her thoughts, her purpose, and her heartbeat with the hidden room. She felt herself expand into the space, no longer merely present, but part of its living memory, part of the spirals, the shadows, the glow. On the pedestal, the lighthouse model rotated slowly, each shadow it cast moving like a reflection of her own inner pulse. Mara leaned closer, studying the tiny carvings and symbols, noting their subtle differences from the sketches she had seen in the journals. She ran her fingers lightly over the base, feeling the texture, the vibrations of history encoded in the stone and wood. A warmth spread from the pedestal into her palms, up her arms, and into her chest, filling her with a calm, unshakable understanding. This room was more than a repository of memory. It was a teacher, a guide, and now a partner in her awakening. She stepped back, lantern held aloft, observing the interplay of light and shadow. The walls seemed to pulse, responding to her movements, the spirals flickering with quiet life. Each artifact, each symbol, each feather drifting in the air felt aware of her presence, acknowledging her attention. Mara realized she could almost feel the history of the lighthouse, of past keepers, of storms weathered and lights maintained, all threading through her consciousness. She understood now that she was not simply discovering the room, she was awakening it, coexisting with it, breathing life into the memory it held. The whisper became clearer, almost tangible, as if the room itself had found her voice. Keep the light, maintain the spiral, honor the silence. Mara's hands clenched the lantern slightly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle into her bones. Shadows stretched and folded across the stone walls, moving with a rhythm that mirrored her pulse. The feather rotated lazily, the journals hummed faintly, and the spirals glowed softly, a language of light and movement only she could interpret. A profound calm washed over her. She knew the room was alive, patient, and that it would continue to guide her, but only if she listened, observed, and responded with care. A distant rumble of thunder echoed through the lighthouse, shaking the floor slightly beneath her feet. Mara felt the energy of the storm mix with the latent power of the chamber, the air vibrating with an unseen force. Lantern flame flickered against the walls, casting reflections across the spirals and artifacts, and she understood that the tower and the storm were intertwined, part of the same living network of light, memory, and vigilance. She moved deliberately, touching a journal, then a crystal vial, feeling each object's resonance, letting the subtle vibrations settle into her consciousness. Every motion she made rippled through the room, teaching her, guiding her, shaping her understanding. The spirals on the walls pulsed brighter as she focused, aligning with her heartbeat. The chamber seemed to breathe with her, exhaling warmth and light into the surrounding darkness. Mara's eyes traced the patterns, noting the connections between objects, shadows, and the rotating lighthouse model. She felt a profound connection, a thread linking her to the keeper's past, to the tower above, and to the vast, restless sea beyond the cliffs. This was not simply discovery, it was communion, an awakening to the language of light and memory encoded into stone and time. A sudden movement caught her eye. The feather drifted faster, spinning as if drawn toward the pedestal. She stepped closer, placing her hand atop the spirals etched into its base. A gentle warmth surged through her fingers, and the glow expanded across the walls, illuminating every artifact, every symbol, every journal. Mara felt the full pulse of the room, the hidden room recognizing her, acknowledging her presence and understanding. She was no longer merely a visitor. She was an active participant, a keeper, a part of the living memory that would continue long after she left. Finally, Mara exhaled, letting the lantern light bathe the chamber in golden warmth. She understood fully now. The hidden room, the spirals, the artifacts, the light, and even the whispering silence were all interconnected, alive, and dependent on her awareness. Every breath, every touch strengthened that connection. The chamber had awakened with her awakening, and she had become its living memory, a guardian of its secrets and the light it contained. She smiled softly, feeling a profound completeness, ready to carry the light forward and honor the rhythm of the hidden room. Her fingers lingered over the spirals etched into the pedestal, feeling the subtle warmth pulse beneath her touch. The feather drifted lazily above the puddle, journals hummed faintly, and a soft shimmer of dust rose in the lantern light. Mara traced the edges of the journals in crystal vials, noticing faded etchings and hidden symbols. The pulse of energy from the spirals responded to her curiosity, expanding slowly, as if the room itself was breathing in her fascination. Each object, shadow, and flicker of light acknowledged her presence. A gentle breeze swept through the chamber, carrying the scent of salt, rain, and distant lightning, flickering shadows across the walls. Mara felt a sacred connection to the lighthouse and all who had kept its light alive. The spirals pulsed with recognition, the feather hovered, and the journals whispered faintly. The lantern's glow revealed faint carvings behind dust and shadow, echoes of past storms, and patterns formed by years of candlelight. Mara bent closer, realizing each imperfection was a story in the symphony of the lighthouse. The hidden room was alive, and she had become its heartbeat, its witness, and its keeper, ready for whatever mysteries awaited beyond its walls. She knew this awakening was not an end, but a beginning, a gateway into understanding the lighthouse, its secrets, and the enduring power of light, memory, and silence. The hidden chamber seemed to breathe as Mara stepped further inside, the lantern's glow revealing spirals that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Each step brought her closer to understanding the intricate web of light, memory, and silence. Shadows shifted gently across the walls, whispering secrets in the flickering glow. The feather hovered silently, reflecting her own calm heartbeat. Mara felt the weight of every moment, every keeper who had walked these paths before her. She inhaled deeply, absorbing the atmosphere of the chamber, sensing centuries of vigilance and quiet knowledge condensed into this sacred space. Her hands traced the intricate patterns etched into the pedestal, noticing details she had never seen. Tiny fractures, almost invisible symbols, a hidden rhythm in the spirals. The journals lay open, pages fluttering as if alive, responding to her presence. A soft breeze carried the faint scent of salt and old wood, threading through the chamber like an echo of the ocean outside. Each object, each shadow, each pulse of light spoke in silent tones, telling her she was now part of the lighthouse's living memory. Mara felt an electric thrill as the energy from the spirals surged subtly beneath her fingertips. The spirals on the walls shimmered more brightly as she focused, responding to her touch. The air seemed alive with a subtle current, carrying faint whispers of the past, echoes of storms, footsteps, and whispered instructions left by keepers long gone. Mara bent closer, letting her fingers hover above the stone, feeling the warmth and life coursing beneath its surface. It was a communion beyond words, a dialogue with something older than light itself. She was no longer an observer. She was a thread in the tower's heartbeat, a living participant in its symphony of light and memory. Lantern light danced across the puddle below, reflecting fragmented shadows of spirals, feather, and walls. Mara's gaze followed the reflections, captivated by the interplay of motion and stillness. Somewhere deep in the chamber, a faint murmur seemed to rise, echoing through unseen corridors. It was the lighthouse's memory, resonating with her heartbeat, guiding her understanding of patterns, history, and secrets preserved in stone, wood, and flame. She felt the room's attention upon her, welcoming her presence, affirming her role as a guardian. A sudden draft brushed across her skin, lifting strands of hair and stirring the feather ever so slightly. Mara inhaled, closing her eyes, letting ambient sounds, the soft hum of journals, the drip of water, the distant wind, merge with her own steady breathing. The room exhaled with her, alive, attuned. Every detail, from carvings to dust motes dancing in the light, became part of a delicate rhythm. She was now one with the pulse of the chamber, a participant in its slow, deliberate dance, and she felt a profound serenity as centuries of silence converged within her awareness. The pedestal's spirals glowed brighter, revealing layers of meaning embedded over centuries. Mara's hands hovered above the surface, sensing subtle rhythms echoing her heartbeat. Journals shifted gently, as if breathing, offering glimpses into the lives of those who had preserved the light before her. Every artifact vibrated with recognition, a silent acknowledgement that she had arrived at the point where past and present converged. Mara felt a deep responsibility, understanding that the room's memory, its wisdom, and its light were now inseparable from her own presence. Shadows stretched and bent unnaturally in the lantern's glow, elongating, folding into corners, tracing themselves along spirals etched into walls and floors. Mara followed them with her eyes, mesmerized by their fluid motion. The feather floated in perfect stillness, a delicate witness to her awakening. Light and shadow intertwined, narrating a story older than the room itself. The spirals pulsed faintly with her heartbeat, guiding her gaze toward patterns that revealed long-hidden truths. The chamber seemed to hum softly, a song of vigilance, patience, and enduring light, speaking directly to her soul. A soft flicker of golden dust rose from the floor as the chamber seemed to inhale and exhale around her. Mara's hands reached for the journals again, opening pages to reveal faint notes and symbols she could almost understand instinctively. The air vibrated with energy, drawing her deeper into the patterns, the spirals, the feather, the reflected light. It felt as if the lighthouse's consciousness had merged with hers, teaching her the rhythm, patience, and enduring vigilance it had preserved through centuries. Mara's heartbeat synchronized with the pulse of the chamber, each breath an acknowledgement of her role as its keeper. The lantern illuminated a final spiral carved into the far wall, larger and more intricate than the others. Mara approached slowly, hands trembling with reverence. She felt subtle warmth pulsing from the stone, syncing with her heartbeat. A whisper echoed faintly in her mind. "The light endures through you." She did not speak. She simply felt the truth resonate through her, a calm certainty settling deep in her chest. The chamber, the lighthouse, the light, and its history had all converged into a single, eternal moment of understanding. Every detail, the flicker of dust in the golden glow, the subtle ripple of the puddle on the floor, the hovering feather, the soft hum of the journals, was amplified, as if the chamber itself was exhaling a sigh of relief and welcome. Mara lingered a moment longer, letting her senses absorb every nuance, every vibration, every echo of the centuries preserved within these walls. Finally, Mara exhaled, letting the lantern light bathe the chamber in golden warmth. She understood fully now. Every spiral, every artifact, every feather, every shadow, and every whisper of silence had led her here. She had become the living memory of the hidden chamber, its heartbeat, and its guardian. The hidden room was alive, and she was inseparable from it, ready to carry the rhythm of light and memory into the future. This awakening was not an end, but a beginning, a gateway into the enduring legacy of the lighthouse, its secrets, and the quiet, relentless power of light, memory, and silence. Mara felt an overwhelming sense of connection to every keeper who had come before, their whispers of guidance echoing softly in the warm glow. She understood now that her role was both weighty and beautiful, to preserve, to witness, and to honor the luminous thread tying past, present, and future together, letting the light endure through her. The lantern flickered softly, casting intricate shadows on spirals and puddles. The feather hovered, catching stray motes of golden dust, while the journals whispered faintly. Mara let her hands hover over the pedestal, feeling the warmth, the hum of centuries, the pulse of moments preserved in stone, ink, and light. She closed her eyes, becoming fully attuned to the rhythm of the room, breathing in the weight of history and the promise of the future. Every shadow on the walls, every flicker of dust, every heartbeat of the feather was a note in a vast, eternal symphony of light and memory. Mara opened her eyes, her chest swelling with calm certainty, knowing she was now the lighthouse's living witness, its eternal keeper, and the guardian of all that had been, all that was, and all that was yet to come. The chamber hummed softly as Mara stepped forward, the lantern casting warm golden light on spirals that now seemed to pulse with recognition. Each shadow stretched and twisted, responding to her presence, telling stories without words. The feather floated in the center, catching stray motes of dust, reflecting the glow like a tiny star. Mara's hands hovered over the pedestal, feeling a subtle vibration that seemed to echo the lighthouse's heartbeat. She realized that the silence she had feared was never empty. It had been waiting for her understanding, waiting for her to complete the circle of keepers. A faint breeze stirred the chamber, lifting pages of the journals as if they were breathing. Mara reached out, letting her fingers brush over the open pages, absorbing the written memories of those who had come before. Notes in faded ink told of storms weathered, lights kept steady, and secrets whispered across centuries. The feather hovered closer, guided perhaps by an unseen force, and Mara felt a quiet connection linking her to every previous keeper. The spirals on the walls glimmered faintly, revealing layers of symbols that pulsed with subtle light, guiding her gaze to corners she had not explored before. The sound of distant waves reached her ears, blending with the soft hum of the chamber, creating a rhythm that resonated through her chest. Mara followed the patterns on the walls, tracing her fingers along spirals that now felt alive. The lantern's glow reflected off the puddle, creating fragmented, dancing shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. Every artifact, every detail, every flicker of light carried meaning, as if the lighthouse itself was speaking to her, teaching her the legacy she had inherited. Her heartbeat synced with the rhythm of the room, a steady cadence that pulsed through the air like a living song. A sudden shimmer of golden dust rose from the floor, swirling gently around her hands. Mara leaned closer to the pedestal, feeling warmth radiate from the spirals, as though the stone itself was aware of her presence. Each shadow seemed to stretch toward her, bending softly around the lantern light, dancing in a delicate choreography. She realized that the feather, the journals, the light, and the spirals were not just objects, they were memories, consciousness woven into the chamber over centuries. Mara's chest swelled with understanding. She was no longer merely observing. She was part of this living memory. Her fingers brushed the spirals once more, and a soft resonance filled the room, vibrating through the stone floor and walls. The journal's pages rustled, revealing passages she hadn't noticed before, their ink faintly glowing in the lantern light. Mara's gaze followed the patterns, discovering subtle connections between symbols, spirals, and the feather's position. She realized that each previous keeper had left not just instructions, but pieces of themselves, traces of thought, of vigilance, of hope. The chamber pulsed in response, and Mara felt a profound responsibility settle over her, a mixture of awe, reverence, and quiet determination. A warm breeze whispered across her skin, lifting strands of hair and rustling the journal's pages. Mara closed her eyes, letting the ambient sounds, the distant sea, the hum of the spirals, the flutter of feathered motion, merge with her heartbeat. Every detail in the chamber seemed alive, dust motes swirling in the lantern glow, shadows bending and stretching, light reflecting on puddles. She felt the weight of centuries pressing gently upon her, a rhythm of vigilance and memory that now pulsed through her very being. Mara realized that this awakening was both an honor and a duty, an endless circle she was now part of. The pedestal glimmered faintly, and Mara leaned closer to trace the final spiral. It radiated warmth and a subtle energy that seemed to echo her heartbeat. The feather floated gently above, catching stray specks of golden dust. Mara's hands hovered over the journals once more, absorbing the legacy of every keeper who had preceded her. She felt the chamber exhale with her, a living entity that now recognized her as part of its memory. Every shadow, every reflection, every faint vibration in the walls spoke to her. She was ready. She lingered, letting her fingers trace the spirals again, feeling the subtle thrum of power beneath the stone. Every carved line, every etched symbol seemed to pulse with stories, with centuries of devotion, and she realized she could hear the faintest echoes of the keepers' thoughts, their quiet breaths, their unwavering vigilance. Lantern light spilled across the chamber, illuminating corners she had never explored. Shadows danced and flickered, creating ephemeral shapes that seemed almost alive. Mara walked slowly, absorbing the atmosphere, the pulse of memory, the whispers of light. The journal's pages fluttered, guided by an unseen rhythm, revealing secrets she had not understood before. Every detail, the feather, the spirals, the puddle, the journals, the reflections, was part of an intricate symphony, a living map of vigilance and memory. Mara's hands moved gracefully, almost reverently, along the artifacts, feeling the chamber's pulse synchronize with hers. She paused, noticing subtle reflections on the puddles that seemed to replay moments from the past, shadows of keepers walking silently, whispers threading through the air. Each movement, each flicker of dust, resonated with the harmony of memory, as if the chamber itself was performing an eternal dance. A subtle golden glow filled the air as the lantern burned steady in her hands. The feather descended gently, resting above the spirals as if acknowledging her presence. Mara's gaze swept the room, taking in every detail, every shadow, every reflection. The chamber vibrated softly with life, resonating through stone, ink, and light. She understood completely. She had become the lighthouse's living memory, its heartbeat, and its guardian. The legacy was now hers to protect, to honor, and to carry forward. She walked slowly toward the far wall, feeling the warmth of the spirals wrap around her like an embrace, the journal's whispers forming a melodic cadence that spoke of patience, endurance, and light. The feather floated alongside her, orbiting the space with a delicate, purposeful grace, and Mara could sense the weight and beauty of the lineage she had inherited. Finally, Mara exhaled deeply, letting the lantern's golden light fill the chamber. She felt the weight of centuries, the pulse of past keepers, and the quiet, relentless power of memory and light settle into her being. Every spiral, every artifact, every shadow, every feather, every whisper of silence had led her here. She was now inseparable from the chamber, a living witness, the lighthouse's eternal keeper. Mara understood that her role was both sacred and endless, to preserve the light, to honor the memory, to guide the future, and to let the rhythm of vigilance endure through her hands, her breath, and her steadfast heart. Every detail, the shimmer of dust in the glow, the reflections on the puddle, the gentle sway of the feather, the rustle of journal pages, was now part of her consciousness. She opened her eyes, calm and certain, ready to carry the lighthouse's legacy into the world. The light within her no longer needed walls or flame. It lived in her breath, her pulse, her gaze. As dawn unfolded beyond the horizon, Mara stepped forward, each heartbeat echoing with the rhythm of the sea, carrying the silence, the memory, and the light wherever she would go.